Have you ever noticed how sometimes, right when you finally decided to start something important or even did first actions, your energy suddenly disappear? You tell yourself you'll do it tomorrow or when you feel ready. It's almost like there is an invisible break inside saying, don't, stop, it's not safe. That moment is what psychologists called forbidden activity, when taking actions feel dangerous, even though nothing is really stopping you. And I want to talk about it because I'm living through it myself. I have a lot of inner resistance when it comes to inner realization, especially when I try to act consistently, whether it's on YouTube or another part of my life. I've started many projects through the years and abandoned most of them. At some point, I realized if this topic hurts me so much, maybe it's exactly the thing what I should explore. Forbidden activity is then doing nothing feels safer than taking actions. While sitting on the couch, I can fantasize for hours about who I could be. But the moment I begin to act, I meet reality, what I can actually do and what I can't, and how much effort it really takes. Every person carries two fundamental fears: the fear of living and the fear of non living, the fear of being and the fear of non being. When I say non being, I don't mean death. I mean the fear of not existing as a person, of being invisible, irrelevant, or meaningless. If by being active and alive, I find myself in situations where I feel like I don't exist, I unconsciously stop being active. I freeze because stopping feels safer than losing contact with myself. That's how activity becomes forbidden. Inside me appears a silent command: don't move, don't stand out, don't risk yourself. It's a protective instinct, but over time, it cuts us off from life itself. We start confusing caution with paralysis. We think what by doing nothing we are protecting ourselves, but in truth we are just freezing our inner self grow. Actions is like a mirror. The moment I start doing something, I see my real reflection. Not the ideal version I imagine, but the true self with real fears, limits, and abilities. That's why dreaming often feels easier than acting. Imagined success doesn't require meeting reality, but once we take real steps, that's where real life begins. So when I start acting, I immediately faced a simple but painful truth: what I can really do and what I can't. And sometimes that realization is unbearable. If my main unconscious goal please others, then my activity no longer belongs to me. I can't tell if what I'm doing is actually good or right. I depend completely of other people's approval. The moment my activity becomes about being liked, not being real, it turns into a heavy burden. I begin to live under hundreds of silent conditions: how I should look, how I should speak, how I should behave so no one rejects me. And that's when my own activity becomes violence against myself. Because I'm no longer expressing life, I'm performing for survival. Many people confused being disciplined with being constantly acceptable. They push themselves not because they love what they do, but because they terrified of losing validation. It looks like a productivity, but inside it's pure tension. When we act only to be accepted, we start losing individuality. We forget our real motives, our curiosity, our natural rhythm. And this kind of activity, even if it looks successful, empty inside, loud, but nothing truly responds. As someone who used to care deeply about how others saw me, I can say that waiting to please is exhausting. But shaping something real, something you've actually lived, gives strength inside of taking it away. If what you share is genuinely useful, people will feel it. You won't have performed so hard. You can be kind and respectful without needing to be perfect. But when we chase admiration, we inevitably lose ourselves. Such activity stops being creative. It becomes manipulation, even if we don't realize it. And at first glance, it can seem exciting to be around people who shine this way. But soon you start feeling something strange. You sense that what's happening isn't fully real. You feel a little deceived, a little used, as if your attention is being captured, not invited. And the saddest part is they don't actually mean harm. They're just terrified of being unseen, so they try to be visible in any cost. Real activity is a real self expression, can't exist without connection to who we really are. If my actions are guided only by the need to be accepted, they become meaningless in essence. Meaning doesn't appear when others approve us. It appears when we feel that our effort reflects something genuine inside. Now let's talk about something deeply connected to this: self aggression. When we start acting and constantly devalue what we do, we turn that aggression inward. We create a huge inner ideal and compare it to that ideal. Everything we actually do seems small, weak, and unworthy. As a result, we live in a constant state of dissatisfaction. Some people become so used to this negativity that they start to see nothing good anywhere, not in their work, not in their life, not even in their loved ones. They've devaluated everything so much that the world turns into a space filled with meaningless objects, and the most meaningless becomes themselves. Their inner scale is enormous, but their real life always seems too small to fit it. They dream of more, of better, of something grand, but that very comparison kills any joy of real action. It's like a standing in front of mountain you build yourself, so tall that every small step feels pointless. That's why perfectionism, in its extreme form, becomes a hidden refusal to live. Because you never allow yourself to exist in the imperfect real world. And that same ideal, that unreachable, how it should be, is what blocks your activity. When you attack yourself for not being perfect, you don't just lose motivation. You start believing that any movement only exposes your flaws. So the safest thing becomes doing nothing. And then, of course, it's easy to blame someone else. My parents ruined my confidence. I have childhood trauma. They didn't let me act. They made me afraid to show initiative. Maybe that's true, but the question is, what now? You can keep this pain like a relic, or you can finally meet yourself and realize that now the responsibility is yours. To deal with self aggression, you have to understand by what standards are you judging yourself? Where did those standards even come from? How often do you actually feel satisfied with yourself? Do you ever evaluate your actions objectively? Or are you always using impossible criteria that no human could meet? For many of us, the truth is we don't allow to be satisfied. Because the moment we feel proud, that inner voices attacks again and again. Not enough. Do more. Do better. And that constant inner battle destroys any natural joy of living. It turns growth into punishment. We think we are motivating ourselves when we are strict, but in reality, we are just building a cage and call it discipline. People often compare themselves to others, to those who seems more successful, more confident, more expressive. They think I can do like them, but maybe you're not supposed to. Their form of activity isn't yours. Your talent may live in a completely different field. And until you listen to yourself, you'll keep trying to copy lives that aren't yours. When we compare, we create an illusion, an ideal person who doesn't actually exist. We don't know their story, their struggle, their pain. We only see the polished surface. So when we measure ourselves by that illusion, we end up rejecting our own reality. And that rejection kills growth faster than any failure ever could. To move forward, we have to learn to act within our real capacity, to take small, honest steps instead of gain imaginary ones. You can't discover life's golden key overnight. You can't unlock a full potential in one leap, but you can start gently, patiently, by allowing yourself to exist, act, and make imperfect moves. Because self aggression is what truly blocks your actions and your evolution. Not lack of talent, not lack of luck, but you refuse to see a real value in what you already are. When your standards are too high to ever feel proud, you will always feel you're failing, no matter what you achieve. And many people live that way, believing if they just criticize themselves harder, they will grow. But you don't grow from punishment, you grow from attention, curiosity, and kindness. Real development begins when you stop fighting yourself, when you stop trying to be good enough and start being interested in who you really are and what can you build from that place. So go slowly, act in your own rhythm. Even small, consistent activity is better than frozen potential. Because in the end, self realization isn't about prove your worth, it's about allowing your life to unfold.